Adrian.
Yes.
Let's start then with HR.
All right, let's start with HR.
What is HR?
What
Can
is
you
HR?
remove some of the fear or maybe preconceived notions of what it is for the general public? I mean, we've all seen The Office and what HR is there.
That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what
A Toby character.
Yeah, that's what
That's
we
you.
are. HR is, in my view, lots of people have lots of different views about what HR is, and that's fine. So in my view, HR is two things. It's kind of risk management for businesses that employ people.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of the corporate side.
Yeah.
So my job is to make sure that we don't end up in lots of trouble.
Yeah.
And that's really simple. You know, that's a bit like being the warehouse manager for a warehouse company or whatever else you might kind of, you know, look at there. It's simply about making sure that we don't do stuff that's really stupid.
Okay.
Now, that's not the only aim, but that is what I consider to be the primary aim, certainly of my role in HR anyway.
Yeah.
On the employment side, for an employee, it's about making sure that what we're trying to do is accessible and achievable. So it's about sort of translating that kind of business objective, the business message, and making that accessible to the people who work for the organisation.
Yeah.
And protecting their rights and interests as well. And there are a number of ways you can do that. That's everything from, you know, supporting them in terms of their career development, all the way through to just making sure that our managers are educated and don't do something daft.
Okay. Well, hopefully that's alleviated some fear of people who are listening and thought, HR, they're always mean, right?
Yeah, I am.
You
but
are.
That's a career goal. So,
But it comes on to something you've said, and it's the things that I want to touch on in this podcast here. It's four things.
yeah.
Lifelong tech enthusiast.
Yep.
Avid gamer.
Yep.
Unapologetically direct.
Yep.
And your special skill,
Yeah.
which is people.
Apparently.
So I want to talk about those things.
Okay.
I think they're important and
Okay.
they're relatable as well for people. So
Okay.
let's talk about tech.
Yeah.
How far back does it go? You said lifelong. Does it go all the way back to...
All the way. Yeah. All my toys as a kid were as high-tech toys as I could get my mum and dad to buy me.
Okay.
I think probably the one that springs to mind as we're talking is the Big Track that I had when I was a kid. That's probably way before your time.
Yeah, I don't know. Big Track.
So Big Track was like an early computerized toy. It was about sort of this big, about a sort of a foot long.
Yeah.
It was kind of like a sort of a white plastic tank type thing.
Right.
And you programmed it with buttons on the top
Okay.
to tell it to go forward for a certain number of lengths, turn a certain number of degrees, all that kind of thing. And it could fire a little laser cannon at the front.
Right.
And that was it was like one of the world's most wanted toys at one point.
Wow. Okay.
And I was super lucky to have been gifted one of those, I think for Christmas one year.
Okay.
As a kid, we moved all over the place. Dad was in the army. We moved every 2 years.
Okay.
So I think at that point we were living in a little village called Long Stanton, I think we were when we got that.
Okay. And you've managed to get one to the village.
I managed
That's great.
to the village.
The village.
The village. I only remember that because I remember my teacher who I think probably had had enough of me talking about this thing in class, had asked me to bring it in.
Okay.
And he became as obsessed with it as I was.
Yeah.
And we spent the whole of one lunchtime messing around with it in the school hall, which for me was like a massive trick because it was this huge flat space where this thing could roam. So the two of us spent ages like programming it to each other.
Yeah.
Had the most fun. It was brilliant.
The closest I ever got of that was in year 3, I believe it was. We got Lego and built these sort of cars and raced them, hit them at each other and see which one could stay together.
Survive, yeah.
I mean, that was as much tech as we did.
Yeah. Well, I was into Lego and stuff like that as well.
Yeah.
But just I loved anything to do with tech. I was a very early adopter of things like word processing, my homework and stuff like that.
Okay. What did your teachers think of that?
Generally speaking, they were okay with it, actually. I found that my writing's always been terrible. And what I found at a very early age is I can type really, really quickly.
Okay.
I can write really, really slowly if I want other people to be able to read it.
Right, okay.
So,
I mean,
so for me,
look at these notes on the back. Yeah, it's very...
So for me, it was like, if I word process my homework, I can do it all at the really last minute because I can type it really, really, really quickly.
Yeah.
And B, people be able to read it. And it's fantastic. You can edit it and everything. It's
Yeah.
great.
You didn't have to use Tipex. My grandma still does that.
Yeah.
Your Tipex out thing.
Yeah, no, I didn't have to use Tipex.
Yeah.
I had I think my first computer for word processing was probably my Atari ST.
An Atari ST. How big? ST. How big are we talking?
The Atari ST was a good size. I mean, it was more than a foot wide, but it was a competition for the what was it called? Was it the Commodore Amiga? I think it was the Commodore Amiga.
Okay.
But it was kind of a gaming thing, but you could also do productivity stuff on it.
Right.
So
okay. So you got into productivity early then?
Productivity early, yeah. I've always been a bit of a writer.
And what about the gaming side of things then? So was it from things like this that, you seemed interested in all those things? Was it just the next step?
Yeah, I was always a bit of a computer gamer from as far as I can really remember.
Yeah.
I remember as kids, I mean, we're talking about young kids. We were bought, we each had one of those. Do you remember those little sort of handheld gaming devices, like a pinball machine?
Okay.
But it wasn't the kind of thing that you would see today. So it's kind of like, it was a lump of plastic with a screen on the front and LED lights that simulated a ball going up and moving around.
So kind of tracked
the light going. I always wanted my little brother's one, because he had it was like a little caveman thing, and you had to get the caveman across to steal the egg from a pterodactyl's cave and then get back out. But it was only sort of 4 pictures.
Yeah.
Because there wasn't really any moving graphics. It was sort of like 4 pictures.
Yeah.
And it was really just about timing.
I see.
But that, back in the olden days, for dinosaurs, there'll be people out there, I promise, who will remember stuff like that and go, oh, wow, yeah, they were cool. And they're probably worth about $1 million these days. But that was kind of like our early gaming.
Okay.
And they were brilliant.
Yeah.
We were very fortunate as kids to have had stuff like that. But I think from then, my older brother got a Commodore, I think it was a +4.
Okay.
So not a 64, but it was the version up. It was like,
right.
Which kind of also led me into things like, well, why is it a +4? Why is it not a 64? Why is it better?
Yeah.
And so understanding a little bit about that, I got into a little bit of coding with that, which I was utterly rubbish at.
Well, you tried it.
But I give it a go.
There we go.
And playing games on those things, loading from a tape deck.
Wow.
And then my Atari, which loaded from a disc, which was like
what's a disc?
Almost instant.
What's that? It's a disc or a disc? A tape or
a 3.5-inch floppy disk.
No, I do remember those. I was where they were just phasing out to the big discs. And then I saw they tried the small discs for a while.
The mini discs.
The mini ones.
Yeah.
Yeah, wow. And then tapes, obviously.
Yeah.
Yep. Moving into teenage years, as the games developed, was there a game that sort of was yours that you sort of played a lot of and you settled on, or were you always sort of looking around at new experiences?
It wasn't really not one game, but there's a sort of more of a genre of games, and I kind of stuck with that.
Right.
I like, I play a bit of anything.
Yeah.
But I like games that take a bit longer, take a bit of thought.
Yeah. A
little bit more kind of strategic, maybe.
Okay.
So I really like games like Populous when that came out. Yep. I probably played that for approximately 1 billion hours.
Civilization, things like that.
Civs I played for a little while, but because that was turn by turn,
I
didn't like that so much.
Right.
I really like the real time element.
Right, I see.
Probably as a teenager, the game I spent the most time playing was, I think I was a teenager at the time, was a game called Cossacks, the first Cossacks game that came out.
I don't know that one.
Where you sort of build up an army. And it was one of those sort of basic games of, you've got to do some mining to get some resources, and then your resources feeds into what you can make.
Right.
And, that
would you go through the ages as well, or was it sort of
kind of
okay, like an Age of Empires,
but not massively.
Okay.
And the aim really was to sort of capture an objective or whatever. But I love to play it just to build up the biggest army that you possibly could.
Okay.
And I was only ever really happy when the computer really slowed down, because I had so much going on. And then I would go and conquer the whole world.
Yes.
Which was not the objective of the game, but who cares?
It was your objective.
What I spent loads of time doing. It was huge fun.
It's interesting you're saying about you sort of build up so much that your computer starts lagging. I remember Civilization.
Yep.
The first or second
Civ
one,
2, yeah.
Civ 2. I was with family. I went to a fishery because they had a fishery, and I really didn't want to go fishing. Not for me. So I sat in playing Civilization all day, and I remember it got to that point.
Perfectly acceptable.
Yeah, it got to that point of the computer took a while to get to the next turn. I was like, this is great. I'm winning, obviously.
Yeah.
Going on from that, what about now? What do you play now? What is your thing that you have time for?
The game I play most now by miles is the Elder Scrolls Online. So I got into that from having played Skyrim.
Okay. Ooh.
Skyrim, I spent another billion hours playing.
Did you play things like Oblivion before that?
No.
Was it not?
No. Skyrim was my first Elder Scrolls game.
Okay.
And I think actually I got into it from reading a review.
Yeah.
So really sort of straightforward, I'll give that a go.
Mm-hmm.
And I absolutely loved it. It was exactly my cup of tea, you know?
Yeah.
It was the sort of open world, do what you want, go whichever direction you want to go in, you know, spend as long as you want building up yourself.
Yeah.
And I played that thing to death, to absolute death.
Mm-hmm.
And then when Elder Scrolls Online came out, they were signing people up for the beta.
Mm-hmm.
So I joined it at the beta, which was in 2014. So I have now been playing that for 10 years. So I play that a lot.
Wow. So what was sort of early stages of 20s like? What did you think you wanted to be when you were maybe 16, 17, 18, that sort of...
A writer.
A writer. Okay.
Yep.
Did you take steps at that point to get there, or was it sort of, I'll do it on the side and...
I suppose I was always a bit sort of conflicted in terms of, I mean, so the only thing I've ever really thought I was any good at is writing.
Okay.
And that sort of fiction, fantasy type stuff. There's a very long story attached to all of that, which is maybe for another podcast.
Okay.
But that's kind of my thing. And I've been writing stuff and the same stuff since I was probably 12, something like that.
Yeah.
One of these days I'll finish it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I was always really interested. I never really wanted to go and work for somebody else.
Yeah.
So I was desperately I hated school.
Mm-hmm.
I just got to the point with it where this sort of concept of constantly being told what to do, which I'm not a fan of.
Mm-hmm.
I just got really bored with. It wasn't the academic side of it. I was okay with that. But just this constant sort of...
So being put in a box, maybe.
Yeah, put in a box, having to show up when you were told to show up, all of those sorts of things, you know, all of those sorts of constraints. I was just absolutely ready just to say, absolutely not doing that anymore. Thanks very much.
Okay.
So I decided I would go and set up my own business and work for myself, and that's what I did to begin with. And my aim was to set up essentially a tech business. Mm-hmm. So it was a business buying and selling. It was essentially a public domain library.
Okay.
And I built up a big library of public domain software. It was a big thing on the Atari at that time.
Right.
And I was planning on doing that. But I'd also got in with a friend who I just sort of met randomly, who was selling a competitor to something called a Deltronics box. So a Deltronics box is what you plugged into a BBC-B computer at school.
Okay.
You remember those?
No.
Okay.
Just after me.
Too young.
Yeah.
So BBC-B computer at school. When you did kind of computing at school, you had one of those, and you learned, you know, Logo was the programming language that you learned. That was it. That's what it was.
Logo. Okay.
Logo. And you controlled a little cursor called a turtle around on the screen, but you could do other stuff with it.
Okay.
So if you attached other devices to the machine, you could do things like sequence traffic lights, that kind of stuff.
Right.
So that was early kind of, you know, BBC-B coding development, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Deltronics box was really, really expensive because it was the brand. And we created one that did exactly the same thing that we could sell to schools for about a third the price.
Wow.
It didn't last very long.
Okay.
It didn't last very long because I was 17.
Okay.
I think 16 or 17. I think 17 at this point. Probably just 17.
Mm-hmm.
I had big plans, big ideas. I was going to set up a retail outlet in town.
Okay.
And I'd sort of done all the research. I'd been and seen this place and all this kind of stuff. It was kind of fairly run down, just sort of around the corner of the main street, kind of off the beaten track kind of thing. But I was figuring that we could make that work. I'd been to see the bank to get some money together. Yeah. They were like, well, if, you know, pull together, you know, your business plan, your cash flow forecast, all that kind of stuff. So I did all my research, pulled together the business plan, cash flow forecast, all that kind of stuff. And I went to see them and they were like, this is absolutely brilliant. And if you were anybody else, we'd absolutely give you the money. And I was like, what do you mean if I'm anybody else? I don't understand. Yeah. I said, well, we can't lend you the money because you're not 18. And it just hadn't I was 17. I suppose it showed my naivety.
Yeah.
Just hadn't twigged for me that, well, that's not going to work.
Yeah.
So,
do you think that's right? Considering what you knew back then, the work you put in, where you were going to go.
What annoyed me, and it was that sort of classic thing that annoyed me about school, to be honest with you. It was that kind of, oh yeah, no, this is great. We really love what you've done. And if you're anybody else, absolutely would have given you this. But no, we can't. It was just that that just really riled me.
Yeah.
So that kind of was not to be. And I kind of went on with it for a little while, but then I couldn't really do what I wanted to do.
Yeah. And
in the end, I needed to earn some money to pay for things that I was trying to get done.
Yeah.
And I just kind of got sucked into the world of working for other people. And it's just one of those things. You get sucked into it. You get kind of addicted to salary.
Yeah.
And then you stop what you're doing. And in the end, I said to the guy that I was working with, look, you carry it on. I'm not going to do this anymore.
Did you have a teething process? I know for me, I was self-employed for a decade. Started working here a year and a half ago-ish.
Yeah.
2 years. And there was a real couple months of, what have I done? Being told.
I was too young.
Okay.
I had that later when I worked for myself. I spent about 18 months consulting in HR.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
And I did have that then. But at sort of 16, 17, frankly, as far as I was concerned, the world could just move out of the way while I got on with my thing.
Okay.
And I didn't really, it's not like I needed lots of income or whatever. At the time, I was living at home with mum and dad, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And so it kind of wasn't really the big issue. The issue for me was that everybody else seemed to be in the way and didn't want to move out of the way. Banks and,
I see.
normal things.
Yeah.
That I guess in my naivety thought would all come together and just didn't.
Do you think things have changed now? Do you see younger upstarters being able to have the tools to be able to create those things now? Or is it the same?
I think it's a little easier. I think the internet, back then we didn't have the internet. I could probably have done an awful lot of what I wanted to do on the internet rather than have to have physical presence.
Yeah.
Back then there wasn't the internet. Without the physical presence, a lot of what I wanted to do probably wouldn't have worked.
Okay.
So yeah, these days I think that would have been a lot easier. I could have done that from my bedroom.
Yeah.
And that would have been no problem.
Yeah.
And I suspect actually I probably would have carried on certainly for a lot longer than I did.
Yeah.
With those sorts of tools. So yes, I think that's true. I still think there is an element of, I think we still, you still get an awful lot of, frankly, old farts who will still talk about kids in a way which is a bit disparaging and a bit, get back to school and, whatever. I find that a little bit much for my tastes.
Okay.
I think you can make something of yourself without necessarily spending your life in an education establishment.
What are the benefits
of
being in an establishment? Education we can find from the internet.
I think it depends entirely on what you want.
Okay.
I think everybody's different. And actually one of the reasons I've stayed in HR, it's not the reason I got into HR, to be really honest, but one of the reasons I've stayed in HR is you do get, I think, a relatively unprecedented opportunity to really help people out on their way in a career, not just a job, but actually making something of themselves.
Right.
And that is, all joking aside, that's sort of tremendously rewarding in a way that is, I think, quite unusual in business, in jobs, in business. There's not much you can do that kind of is parallel to that. Okay, so... I got all serious there for a second. I promise I won't continue.
No, it's good. Glimpses of it now and then.
Just occasionally.
Yeah. Working at HGS.
Yep.
Hinduja Global Solutions.
Yeah.
Correct?
Working for the Hindujas.
Chief People Officer.
Yeah.
That was your final role there.
Yeah.
Again with people.
Yeah.
How was that? And then moving to PPL, which I know is the music industry, right? You're working with licensing and things like this.
So HGS was an interesting one. HGS was that company I got phoned about,
right?
When I'd stopped consulting, or when I was thinking about what do I do with consulting.
Yeah.
And I started there in a permanent capacity. So I'd taken this job as I can't remember what the original job title was, but it was like people director or something like that. Basically HR director by any other name. And within about 2 weeks, I realized this was absolutely not what was sold to me.
Right. Okay.
And I hear that, and you can imagine in my role, I hear that an awful lot.
Yeah.
But this was really fundamentally,
just
I had been totally lied to. And
the headhunter wanting to get the bag, maybe.
No, it was the CEO actually.
Oh, okay.
And And I had a little bit of a falling out with the CEO. And it was a number of things. It was like, financially, this is where we are, and this is where we are with clients, and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And I started, and that was absolutely not the case. In fact, quite the opposite was the case. The company was in enormous trouble.
Okay.
I was a little bit annoyed with myself because I didn't do enough due diligence. I was a little bit too happy to have been offered something interesting.
Yeah.
And we had a couple of things go on, and I quit.
Right.
And I had a bit of a falling out with this guy. Told him in my unapologetically direct way what I thought of him.
That's interesting. Actually, through this podcast, it's been very PG.
Yeah. I'm trying so hard not to swear. My team will be absolutely fascinated to see that I can go this long.
Yeah. That's the title of the video now.
Yeah.
He went 45 minutes without swearing.
Nobody who knows me will believe that's possible. Yeah. I'm having to stop myself actually and go, did I swear in that sentence? No, I didn't. I'm okay. So I had a bit of a falling out with him. He quite literally begged me to stay. He practically broke down.
Okay.
And sort of practically begged me to stay. They were in all sorts of trouble. Mm-hmm. They really needed some support. And I said, well, I didn't really want to, but I said, well, I'll do it for this amount of money.
Okay.
And he went, okay, then. I sort of thought, flip. I should have said more. And I agreed. Okay, look, I said, and the whole thing from that point just completely unraveled. We had about 3 months where the whole thing unraveled, including him going.
Right.
Most of the senior leadership team disappeared. I think we had literally every client was telling us they were going. This is in a sort of an outsourcing business.
Yeah.
It was a total disaster. And I'm kind of going, well, on a contract. I was already out of here anyway.
You're watching the fire.
Yeah. And then the group chief executive came over and sort of said, look, what's going on here? And I said, well, do you really want to know, or do you just want me to tell you it's all great and then you can go play golf or something? I said, no, I really want to know. And give him credit, he really wanted to know. So I said, well, this is what we've got to. So he said, well, do you know anyone? You've been around in the industry a while. Do you know anyone who could do this job? And I said, well, it depends on whether you want like deeply operational or really client focused.
Yeah.
If it's client focused, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
He said, yeah, that's exactly what I want. I want somebody who can come in and sort the mess out from a client and a commercial perspective.
Yeah.
So I introduced them to somebody I'd worked with and for before when I was with TCS Managed Services and with merchants, somebody I'd met at merchants. Really great guy. He got the job as CEO.
Okay.
And I worked with him for a couple of months to build up a team. We specifically wanted a group of people who we'd known before.
Right.
So we'd sort of set out very explicitly to deliver nepotism. It was who do we know who can come together really super quickly as a team. This thing was losing millions a month and was in trouble. And it was kind of a 5-year rescue mission.
Okay.
Can it be saved, and can it make money? And kind of at the end of getting everybody in, he said, well, I'm assuming you're staying. And at that point I was too far in to say no. So I took the job there as CPO alongside him and the team that we'd hired.
Wow.
And we set about turning this thing around that was losing millions. I think it was losing about 3.5 or 3.7 million a month at the time we started, to the point we finished where it was making good profits, good government contracts. We did loads of work for the government through COVID and through some of the Brexit changes as well.
Yeah.
And did a really great job. Got the business up to about 6,000 heads.
Wow. Wow.
But
is that where Kwalee's heading?
Well, I don't know about 6,000 heads. It'd be nice to get to 6,000. But because if it got to 6,000 heads, that would mean we were making some absolutely astonishingly brilliant games.
Yeah.
And that would be great, wouldn't it?
Yeah, we'll get there.
Yeah.
Right. I'm conscious of time, and we need to fit in this quiz. So
I don't think we do.
We do. So
anything that makes me look less intelligent than I want to look is definitely something we don't need to do.
Or it's going to elevate.
Yeah, make me seem like even more of a geek.
I mean, but it's nice to have that, and then the other side. So we'll head into the quiz, and then after that, the last thing we'll do. I always ask for some advice for younger people, etc. But we'll do a couple questions from here. So, oh my goodness,
how much are you looking forward to this on a scale of 1 to 10?
So some of these are very difficult. So we're going to start.
Go for fact.
They are, because I was looking. I'm quite a big nerd too, but I was looking at these and I was like, huh?
Oh,
Right, we'll start with an easy one. And then we'll go
I'll
from
just
there.
get this connector ready. So if it's really hard, I'm just going to pull the connector. Oh no, it's all broken.
It all fell apart. Question 1. What is the name of the giant spider Frodo, Sam, and Gollum encounter on their way to Mordor?
Shelob,
Wonderful.
daughter of Ungoliant.
Now you've said that, we're gonna go deep. So, well, yeah, nice and easy. We'll start with another relatively easy one.
Okay.
The Palantir.
Yeah.
What was it used for?
It was a seeing stone. It was used to communicate with other Palantiri.
Okay. This is all going really well.
Okay.
How many
Is
great...
that the time? Oh.
Yeah. Gotta get... How many great rings were made in total?
Great. How many?
Yeah.
God, I've got to add up now. 9, 10, 7, 20. 20? 9 for mortal men, 7 for the dwarves, 3 for the elves, 1 ring to rule them all.
20 it is. This is going really well.
Okay.
Now, this one really shocked me.
Okay.
And I also now feel bad for his children. How many children did Samwise have?
Oh. How many did he have? I think it was he like 5 or something? I want to say it was either 5 or 7. I'm going to go with 5.
13.
Was it 13? Was
13.
it really? Oh, there you go.
But I don't know if he had them before he left or after he came
He came back
with Rosie.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
It was after they came back.
Yeah.
And I think he had. Did he have one before Frodo went? I think he had 1 or 2 or something like that before Frodo left.
Okay. Poor kids. Was it like 40 plus years they were gone?
Well, no, because
right? Wasn't the walk to Mordor 40 years?
No.
Or am I all over the place?
Yeah, you are right.
I'm not answering the questions here. Let me not dig myself a hole. Okay, so how many words are there in the Elvish language of Sindarin?
How many words are in the Elvish language of Sindarin?
Let me give multi-choice. 10,000, 12,000, 20,000, or 25,000.
So this is a language that Tolkien created specifically for the book.
Yeah.
Because that was his specialism
Yeah.
as a professor.
That had to be translated.
I don't know. I'm going to go with 20,000.
25.
25,000.
Very close, though. Very close. I think these were...
isn't it?
Yeah.
Because I think there are 2 or 3 languages, whole languages that he wrote.
Yeah.
Including
and he wrote the book in
everything. Yeah, that's nuts. But fantastic.
Imagine being so invested that it doesn't matter if other people don't understand it.
Yeah.
They have to learn the language. Which of the film's cast members actually met J.R.R. Tolkien?
That can only have been the guy who played Christopher Lee.
Yes, Christopher Lee.
Yeah.
Which we've probably known from watching. If any of you have watched the extended discs, he goes on about it there. Yeah. Good old Christopher Lee.
He is also probably the inspiration for James Bond.
Oh.
Another story.
Christopher Lee. We've heard all sorts of stories about him, though, on set.
Fascinating character, Christopher Lee.
Okay. Who did Tolkien consider to be the chief hero of the Lord of the Rings trilogy?
Sam.
Yes. Do you think they show that enough in the films?
No. But I think they do the Peter Jackson films. I think they do a relatively good job of that,
especially in the last one. I think.
Yeah.
With the old.
Yeah. It's hard, when you're making a film, it's hard to do the same thing as you're doing with a book. But I think they follow the story pretty well, actually.
Yeah.
Especially when you consider how much stuff is in those books. I mean, it does get a bit crazy.
Have you seen the new TV show?
Yes, I have. Yeah.
So
I'm half impressed.
Yes.
Half devastated.
It's
a real struggle.
I like the world so much that them living in it was.
Yeah.
I was already. Yeah. Most of the way there. So lots of people obviously comment on the writing and things like this, acting, etc. I wasn't really looking too much at that.
Yeah.
So
I think a little bit of the casting was a bit off.
Yeah.
And I think there are some. I think whenever you when you take really sort of heavy licenses with something that's as well loved as it is, I think that's always going to be a bit of a problem.
Yeah. Well, season 2.
Yeah,
Let's see what comes out.
Yeah.
Now we'll end on this one. These haven't been too difficult. Okay. There's other ones, but we'll another time.
Okay.
Which film won the Academy Award? Which of the trilogy?
It was the last one, wasn't it?
The Return of the King. Yeah. It was nominated for 11 Academy Awards.
Won 11, didn't it?
It won 11, sorry, and won every single one of them.
Yeah.
Tied with Titanic.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Titanic. I mean, they were fantastic films. I remember watching The Hobbit and being so disappointed.
Yeah. That's the difference between, yes, you can create these films and it's a labour of love and you can go and do whatever you want to do, and actually we need another one from you because commercials.
Because it made so much money.
Yeah.
Let's continue that train.
Yeah.
Now everyone knows what of a nerd you are.
You could have gone into way more detail than that. That was actually...
Well...
And you chose the films as well, which is a little bit disappointing because that's...
I wanted to... So that at least someone out there knows an answer. Yeah. But hey, when you mentioned Elder Scrolls Online, I think you crossed the border of nerd there.
Well, that's why Elder Scrolls Online is why I call our executive team the tribunal of all things.
Holy moly. Okay. Adrian, Lord of the Rings, you did exceptionally well. We'll move on to the last portion of this talk. Kwalee.
Yep.
VP of HR.
Yeah.
Move into radio voice. VP of HR.
VP of HR.
Yeah.
Yeah, go on.
This title has not been presented to you through your years.
No.
When you came into the role, what was it about it that you thought, yeah, I can see myself helping build out this company and sort of make the changes that need to be made?
I think a couple of things. Obviously, I mean, given my history, given the fact that I am a bit of a gamer and all that kind of stuff, the idea of coming to work for a gaming company was a big draw. Mm-hmm. I specifically didn't want to go back into the contact center outsourcing business. That's very cutthroat, very low margin, very difficult. So it's a lot of stress over a lot of years, and it's like, I had enough.
Yeah.
So the idea of not going back into that and going into something that I really do love, that was a big draw for me.
Okay.
But actually, there were two things about the company. The first was everybody I met in the organization was great. I really just thought, I can see myself working with these guys. Yeah. And there's obviously a real passion, a passion that you don't get in a lot of businesses.
Okay.
So coming from something like, outsourced contact center, and I think I'd say the same about, maybe retail or warehousing or whatever.
Yeah.
It's like, how much do you really love your product? Yeah. We didn't really have a product. Yeah. We just, it was just about making money.
Yeah.
Which is great, but it's just not something you can really love.
Yeah.
And that was really great. It was great to meet people who obviously were super passionate about what it was they were doing in life. That's intoxicating.
Yeah.
And the more we were talking, the more I was thinking, what, I can do that. You've got problems that I've got the skills to sort out. And that, I don't mean that in an arrogant way. I just mean there is a fit here for my skill set.
Yeah.
I think I could help, actually.
Yeah.
And I think I'd have quite a lot of fun doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And that was, I kind of went into it thinking, well, I'll give it a go. I'm not very invested. We'll see. You already mentioned it's quite difficult to jump industry.
Mm-hmm.
This was very much jumping industry, like at the extreme end of the scale.
Yeah.
So I wasn't especially hopeful, but I must admit, particularly after the final interview that I had, I was very much thinking I'd be quite devastated actually if they don't offer it to me.
You've been here
since April.
Okay. 10 months-ish?
Yeah, about that.
How's it gone? Are you happy coming up to the end of the year? Are you happy with what we've achieved?
Unequivocally, this is the job that I have loved the most in my career. Some of the things that I thought would be the case when I was going through the interview process have turned out absolutely to be the case.
Okay.
So, people are incredibly passionate about what they're doing, which is just, even if I don't agree with them, it's so nice to be dealing with people who love what they're doing in the industry they're in. That's if for anybody out there who hasn't experienced the opposite of that, this is definitely where you want to be.
Right.
So that's the first thing. The second thing is, I knew coming in that there were some things that would be hard to fix that we could fix.
Yeah.
And we have.
Yeah.
And we're on a bit of a journey. We've got a bit of a plan, probably sort of, 14, 18 months, something like that.
Yeah.
And we're on track and we're doing it. So there's a sort of a sense of, I really like it.
Yeah.
There's a really lovely culture. It's, it's productive, but it's also very passionate, and that's brilliant. Yeah. But on the other side of it, we are actually getting some stuff done. So there's a bit of everything going on, which is really quite nice. It's nice to drive home at the end of the day and say, yeah, this is all going in the right direction.
Yeah. You've gone through your career and you've made your way up to this point and worked for yourself. But worked for yourself and worked at the top of companies and helped companies grow and make money and also be a wonderful place to work. Advice for young people who are setting out to work within a company, maybe advice on career progression and development, what things to look out for as they go forward. I know on one podcast, Will was saying having a really good manager is incredibly important, and things like this. What would you say?
Okay, so there are a few things maybe.
Yeah.
I think I would say, first of all, most importantly, don't lose yourself.
Mm-hmm.
It's so easy, I think particularly today, to be corralled into being just awfully conformist.
Yeah.
And I would say to anybody coming through, don't be.
Okay.
I'm conscious that one of the reasons I've been relatively successful is, I've been what I call gobby, and I've stuck up for myself.
Yeah.
I've taken time to know myself as I've gone through my roles. Okay. And I'm not the kind of person who particularly enjoys that sort of experience or exploration.
Yeah.
But I think you have to know what you're all about.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it'd be very easy for everyone just to stick you in a pigeonhole, put a label on you, and you'll be about what they think you're about.
Okay.
And that's the moment at which all enjoyment in life just goes out of the window.
Right.
So somewhere along the line, you've got to know about you. You don't have to be perfect. I know that I'm very far from being perfect, but that's not the point. You've got to know what your imperfections are, and you've got to not lose all of that about yourself.
Right.
And, it's that old phrase, don't sell out to the man. There's a bit of that, I suppose, in my advice. Keep an understanding of yourself and don't lose yourself in corporate